Alright folks, here we are, it's another day, it's another idea. Because what Frank Seravalli went out there and did on the recent Daily Faceoff Buyout Candidates article was list out 9 different names that could be the subject of having their contracts terminated, paid in 2/3, and setting these players free in the process. So, this article is from June 13th. It will be linked in the description below. I will say this isn't the only article that has been published in the past few days to go out there and talk about buyouts. There was another piece by Harman Dale and Thomas Strantz on The Athletic, I think yesterday, I'm pretty sure. Something like that, and a lot of the names are similar. There are a few different ones as well, so there certainly isn't a lack of buyout-related content on the internet right now if you wanted to read about some of your favorite hockey players that might end up leaving their current teams. But in this video, what I wanted to do was go out there and talk about the top 2 names on Frank Seravalli's list. You already know them from the title and from the thumbnail because, you know, you can read, most likely, mostly because these 2 names are the ones that intrigue me the most, and it is my show and I'll do whatever the heck I want. So, let's go out there and, sorry about that, that was very rude. Let's go out there and talk about the first name that is on Frank Seravalli's buyout candidates list for the 2024 offseason. Pierre-Luc Dubois, center, LA Kings, 25 years old, his contract has 7 years left and $8.5 million a year. Which means the buyout structure would be 14 seasons long if he were to get bought out at $1.1 to $3.8 million a year. This is a really beefy contract that could be so long, so astronomically long if you're going for the next decade and a half for the LA Kings. But the fact that Dubois is number 1 is worth thinking about, in my opinion, because the fact is he was terrible in this prior season. Sure, he had 40 points in 82 games played. That's not that bad, but for an $8.5 million guy that was supposed to be a top-line center, to play in the bottom of the lineup, literally, to only have 1 point in 5 games in the playoffs, and to completely trail off offensively in the latter half of the year, Pierre-Luc Dubois really didn't show off well, and the crazy part is he actually played pretty alright for Team Canada at the World Championships. He had 9 points in 10 games played over there. We had similar thoughts heading into the tournament about this, saying, hey, if Pierre-Luc Dubois goes over to Team Canada, it's kind of the worst case scenario, because if he plays well and he produces, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, how are you not able to produce with the LA Kings? Why are you good now whilst playing for Team Canada, but you weren't good playing in the NHL? And if instead he sucks in the tournament, then it's like, okay, well, you just suck, period. This contract is not worth it. It's a lose-lose for everybody involved here if Pierre-Luc Dubois goes over to the Worlds and he performed well, which we all saw. But either way, his point production, the way he progressed in 23-24, how he went from middle to top-line center to eventually fading towards the bottom of the lineup, it was really bad, and I don't think anybody's going to go out there and defend Dubois saying that his play this season was actually great. But because of that, Frank Seravalli labels this guy at $8.5 million a year for 7 more seasons as the number 1 potential buyout candidate. Let's go out there and read what he says here. Yes, we heard Rob Blake say at Locker Room Cleanout Day that the LA Kings were not planning on buying out Dubois. But this makes too much sense. At least until June 24 it does. That's when Dubois turns 26. For now, he is 25, and that means the Kings are only responsible for paying 1/3 of the money remaining on his deal instead of 2/3, which would happen when he celebrates his 26th birthday. If the Stanley Cup Finals goes to Game 7, then it won't be possible. And of course, a 14-year buyout sounds painful now, but the majority of the cap hits are negligible at a time when the cap will be well exceeding $100 million per year. The Kings would save $32 million in real cash, which is a serious amount of dough. It's better to admit a mistake and pay a lesser price rather than double down and have it hurt much worse in the long term. And you know, when you label it out like that, when you say that, yeah, Pierre-Luc Dubois is only 25 years old right now, he'll be 26 later on, and once he hits 26 years old, that's when the buyout contract becomes 2/3 of his remaining owed money right now, rather than 1/3 that it would be if he were to be bought out today, for example, it does make a lot of sense to think about the idea of a PLD buyout, at least for right now. Everything kind of aligns in the best way possible. You won't be paying too much money, you'd be saving a lot. And I do like the point that Seravalli makes about how a lot of the years of these extra cap dollars that the Kings would be getting if they bought out Dubois would be affecting their cap hit in a year where, let's say the cap has gone up to $100+ million. It'll be so far into the future that everything will probably be a lot higher, so maybe it's not that bad when you think about it, even if 14 years is indeed a freaking long time. Of course, though, we have to wait and see until the Stanley Cup Finals finishes up, and then we'll see if the Kings decide to execute on a plan like this. But of course, this is not the only name that is talked about in Frank Seravalli's article. It is one of 9. What I wanted to do was go out there and read the second one here, because it relates to a team that is participating in that same exact Stanley Cup Finals we're looking at right now. Number 2, Jack Campbell. Edmonton Oilers, 32 years old, 3 years remaining in a $5 million AAV deal, and the buyout structure would look like 6 seasons from now until the end of 2030, I think, varying from $1.1 million to $2.6 million a year against the Oilers' cap. I think, at this point, thinking about the Stanley Cup Finals, talking about what we saw, Kyle Pickard, Stuart Skinner, 1-2, and you're seeing these guys bounce around, switch between the net in certain series. Stuart Skinner has been the guy, pretty much, for the last few games here, extending into the second round against the Canucks. But ultimately, it's his crease now, and I think Cal Petersen has proven to be good enough as a backup to suffice in some sort of a role, have him remain in that position for next year and beyond. But unfortunately, it means that Jack Campbell's job is no longer required when thinking about the Edmonton Oilers and their perspective on saving dollars. Taking a look at the contract, I mean, it is pretty huge. $5 million a year certainly has not paid off well for the Oilers when thinking about Jack Campbell, but if they wanted to try to remedy that, this is what the buyout could look like. This is the scoop written out by Frank Seravalli. Jack Campbell struggled nearly from every street in oil country, seemingly unable to perform under the weight of his contract. He was waived and banished to the AHL's Bakersfield Condors in November after the team's 2-8-1 start. Campbell has been back with the team as an emergency third goaltender in the playoffs, but it was telling that he wasn't even on Edmonton's radar as Stuart Skinner struggled in round 2, and they turned to journeyman Cal Pickard. They didn't trust Campbell. It's hard to imagine that changing. Yes, the buyout isn't pretty, but the Oilers can't continue with $3.85 million in buried cap space devoted to Campbell. Edmonton needs relief from that, and stretching out the term of Campbell's deal in exchange for $2.85 million in cap savings for the next season makes sense. So, we're all talking about the Oilers, we're talking about their contracts and who can stay, who can go. Leon Draisaitl is eligible for an extension in a few days. We'll see whether or not he does decide to stick around. But every dollar saved can help out tremendously when it comes to locking up the guys that are supposed to be able to carry you into the Stanley Cup Finals and beyond. Connor McDavid needs a contract for 2026. Leon Draisaitl needs a contract for 2025. These guys need money. And whatever the Oilers can do to help get some of that money out now would be very beneficial. So for Jack Campbell, it's the obvious target here to go out there and talk about the guy was buried in the AHL. He wasn't given a prominent role with the team after the bad start. He does not play at a $5 million caliber at all. He is an easy buyout candidate, but of course you have to go out there and consider the ramifications on your cap the next few years. 3 years for Campbell remaining at $5 million is bad, but you could debate that 6 years of a few extra dollars on top of that would be a little bit worse. It all just depends on your point of view and what your plan is if you were Edmonton to try to navigate that extra cap space that you get in the short term for free enough from Jack Campbell. So, Oilers fans, Kings fans, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about these two guys potentially getting bought out. What are your thoughts on Pierre-Luc Dubois and Jack Campbell being 1 and 2 on Frank Seravalli's buyout list, I guess you could say? There are indeed 7 other names, and of course there are many, many names otherwise that are talked about on social media and different parts of the internet, so if you have any extra thoughts on who could get bought out and who could stay, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the status of the NHL as a whole right now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.